Did you change the lock? Amina's voice cracked more from disbelief than volume. She stood there, keys in hand, 7 months pregnant, staring at the door she'd unlocked every night for nearly 2 years. She tried the key again. Nothing. The hallway was dim, and the porch light above her door was dead. Her hands trembled, not from cold, though the December wind bit through her coat. It was the stillness. No thump of music inside. No smell of leftover food. No low hum of the TV he never turned off. Just silence. She reached for her phone. Battery dead. Of course. She exhaled slowly, sat on the front step, and pressed her fingertips against her temple. This couldn't be real. He wouldn't. Not like this. Earlier that day, she'd spent 2 hours at the clinic, paid for prenatal vitamins out of pocket because his card had bounced, and shared a cab home because the rideshare apps were glitching. She'd told herself she was just tired, that everything would feel better once she was back in her own bed. Now she wasn't sure if she even had one. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. A neighbor, a woman Amina had spoken to maybe twice, walked past carrying a trash bag. She offered a quick smile. The woman gave her a nod, avoided eye contact, and kept walking. Amina pulled her coat tighter. Her ankles were swollen. She shouldn't be sitting on cold concrete, but there was nowhere else to go. The lobby was locked. The bench outside the bookstore would be freezing, and she wasn't going to knock on some stranger's door and... She froze. Across the hall, a door opened. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there. A tall man in a grey hoodie, sleeves pushed up to his forearms, one hand on the doorframe. Amina had seen him before, quiet, alone, in and out, never smiled, never stared. Tonight, he stared. "I think he changed the lock," she offered, trying to keep her tone steady. He didn't say anything, but... The man didn't respond. His eyes scanned her face, then her belly, then her hands. After a moment, he stepped back inside. Amina let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. She blinked away the sting behind her eyes. She wasn't going to cry, not in the hallway, not where anyone could hear. Then, the sound of a door creaking open again. She looked up. He was back, with a blanket. "You'll catch a chill," he said. His voice was low, quiet. Not warm, not cold. Just, "There, I'm okay," she said softly. "I know," he replied. Still, he didn't offer help, didn't ask questions, just set the blanket beside her and turned back toward his apartment. The door stayed open. She hesitated, looked at the blanket, then stood slowly, pressing her hand to her back. Inside, his apartment smelled like cinnamon and books. It was small, clean, and warm. He pointed to the couch without looking at her. "You can sit. You don't have to talk." She did. He moved into the kitchen, his footsteps soft against the hardwood floor. No music, no TV, just a kettle's quiet rumble. When he returned, he handed her a mug. Mint tea, no sugar, just hot enough to hold between her palms. She sipped. No one spoke. 10 minutes passed, maybe more. Then she cleared her throat. "Can I use your phone?" He handed it over without a word. She dialed. It rang once. Then a woman answered. Amina stared into the distance, her voice barely audible. "Tell him I know, and he doesn't need to come back." She returned the phone. He took it, placed it on the coffee table, and didn't say anything. Didn't ask. The tea warmed her chest, but her throat still ached. "I'm Amina," she said finally. He nodded once. "Eli." The next morning, Amina woke to the smell of pancakes. For a second, her mind scrambled to place herself. The room was different. Spare furniture, bookshelf in the corner, walls painted a dull cream. The faint sound of wind outside reminded her it was morning, not night. She sat up. Her coat had been folded neatly over a chair. A tray sat beside the bed. 2 pancakes, no syrup. A mug of water. And a note. "You don't owe anyone anything right now. Eat while it's warm." She read it twice, blinked, and smiled. Just a little. She dressed quickly and stepped into the main room. Eli wasn't there. The door was locked from the inside, but the keys were on the counter. A second note said, "I'll walk you to work if you want." "I'm across the hall." She didn't knock. She just opened her door, stepped outside, and waited. He came out a minute later, hands in his coat pockets. They didn't talk on the way. They didn't need to. But when they reached the bookstore, her job since college, he paused. "You good?" Amina nodded. "If the lock still doesn't work, let me know." "I will." He turned and walked off. That day, Olivia, one of her co-workers, raised an eyebrow as Amina hung her coat. "You're still with... what's his name?" "No." Amina's voice didn't crack this time. Just a clean break. The key worked when she got home. That alone made her pause on the steps. Her stomach felt heavier than usual, and the wind had picked up. But the porch light was still out. No welcome, no apology note, no sign he'd even returned. She turned the lock slowly, half expecting the worst. The place was empty, clean in the way people clean before they leave for good. The couch had been cleared of his usual clutter. No shoes by the door, no phone charger on the nightstand. The closet on his side hung open, vacant. Her shoulders dropped. There was no anger. Not yet. Just confirmation. He was really gone. Amina stood in the living room for a long time, coat still on, purse still dangling from her shoulder, like if she stayed still long enough, she could reverse whatever decision he'd made. But reality didn't reverse. It pressed forward. She walked slowly to the kitchen, opened the fridge. Empty, but for a half carton of eggs and one bottle of ginger ale. On the counter, the prenatal vitamins she'd bought the day before sat unopened. A part of her laughed, quietly, bitterness on the edge. She turned the light on in the hallway and noticed something different. The light bulb in the overhead fixture had been changed. New. That wasn't him. She walked back outside. Across the hall, Eli stood on a stool with a screwdriver in one hand and a new bulb in the other, replacing the porch light. She blinked. "You really didn't have to," she said. "I know," he replied, not looking at her. "But it's dark out here." He screwed in the bulb, stepped down, and tested the switch. It flickered, then glowed warm. "There," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Thank you." He gave a slight nod. People shouldn't have to fumble in the dark. Something about the way he said it made her chest tighten. "I'm not used to neighbors noticing anything," she said. "I'm not used to talking," he answered. That made her smile. "Guess we're both doing new things," she said, then hesitated. "Do you want coffee or tea? I don't have much, but..." He shook his head once. "I don't come in unless I'm asked." Amina blinked. It wasn't sarcasm. He wasn't teasing. It was respect. "I'm asking," she said quietly. He looked at her for a moment, then nodded. Her kitchen felt too quiet with someone else in it. She wiped the counters instinctively, apologizing for the lack of furniture, the absence of food. "I haven't really shopped. We're supposed to do it this weekend, but..." "You don't need to explain," he said, sitting at the small two-seater table like he'd been there before. She made mint tea again. It was all she had. When she placed the mug in front of him, he said, "Thank you," like it mattered. They sipped in silence for a few minutes. "Do you always keep to yourself?" she asked, finally. "Mostly. Why?" He didn't answer right away. "I've seen enough mess to know I don't need to be part of one." Amina leaned back in her chair. "You think I'm a mess?" "No," he said without hesitation. "I think you're someone who's still standing after one." That surprised her. "You don't even know me. You came home pregnant, locked out, phone dead, didn't panic. Just sat on the stairs and folded your coat tighter." She looked down. "I didn't have any other choice." "That's the thing about most strength," he said. "It doesn't feel like a choice. But it is." That silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind that made space for truth. "You used to volunteer," she said. "Outside the bookstore. I saw you stocking the shelf. I still do. Early mornings now. Why?" He shrugged. "The street looks tired. Someone has to care." She smiled softly. You say a lot by saying so little. Eli looked at her. You listen like someone who's used to being ignored. That stilled her. I used to explain everything, she said. Make excuses for people who didn't show up. Pretend I wasn't angry, just confused. And now? I'm tired. Eli stood. Then rest. She walked him to the door. As he stepped into the hallway, she asked, What do you do? For work? Food bank, he said. Logistics. Nights mostly. It keeps me close to people, but not too close. She nodded. Good night, Eli. He looked at her porch light. It's on now. The next morning, he wasn't outside. She walked to work alone, slower than usual, rubbing her back every few blocks. At the bookstore, Olivia raised an eyebrow. You look different. Thanks, Amina said, shelving a stack of returns. I meant tired. Oh, but also lighter. Amina paused. Is that a nice way of asking if I broke up with him? Did you? Yes. Olivia didn't push. Then yeah, you look lighter. She smiled, grateful for the lack of questions. Mid-morning, a customer left a small wrapped box at the register with Amina's name on it. Inside was a phone charger. No note. She looked outside, saw no one. But across the street, she spotted a grey hoodie disappearing into a crowd. Amina was beginning to recognize Eli's rhythm. He never knocked, never made noise in the hallway. But somehow, when she stepped out to leave for work, he was usually finishing something, replacing the broken gate latch, organizing the recycling bins, restocking the food shelf down the block. He didn't do it for recognition. He just did it. Saturday morning, she passed him outside the bookstore. He was wearing gloves, sleeves pushed to his elbows again, unloading a flat of canned goods from the back of a borrowed van. His movements were practiced, efficient. You're early, she said, stepping around a stack of boxes. So are you. I opened the store today. He handed her a roll of tape. I figured I'd bring extras. They always run out. She took it. You volunteering today? Not officially. You're here. That counts. He didn't reply, but she caught the slight quirk in his mouth. Almost a smile. By noon, they were both on their knees in the back corner of the bookstore, sorting paperbacks by genre. A volunteer drive was in full swing. Children laughed near the crafts table. An older couple organized donations, and someone played soft music over a Bluetooth speaker. Amina handed Eli a box labeled, "Yeah, you ever read these?" she asked. He glanced at the titles. No siblings growing up, just a sister. She used to read to me when the power went out. Amina sat back. Older? Barely. She was always a step ahead, though. Knew how to handle people. Where is she now? Gone. The word was quiet. Final, not bitter. I'm sorry, Amina said. Eli nodded. She would have liked this place. The smell, the quiet. They kept working. Amina didn't ask more. Later, after the event wrapped, she sat with a cup of cocoa by the shop window, watching people trickle out. Eli returned from taking out trash and dropped into the chair beside her. You're still here. Hard to leave, she said. This place is one of the only things that still feels normal. He nodded, cradling a mug of black coffee. Thanks for showing up. I don't sign up for things, he said. But I follow through. You always that way? Only since I stopped trying to be charming. She laughed. So you were charming once? I had a good front. But you learn quick that charm doesn't pay bills, doesn't change who stays and who leaves. His words didn't sound like pity, more like memory. I tried being easy to love once, Amina said. Didn't work. Eli glanced at her. Maybe the right person won't ask you to bend first. Amina didn't say anything, but she looked at him longer than she meant to. Sunday evening, she stood on her porch watching the streetlights blink on. He was outside again. This time fixing the doorbell panel for one of the older tenants. A tiny screwdriver in one hand, flashlight clamped in his teeth. You ever take a break? She called. He spit the light into his palm. I sit down sometimes. When? Usually after 9. Alone? He glanced up at her. Always. She hesitated. Would it be weird if I joined you? No. Would it be weird if I said, I've been leaving the porch light on in case you wanted to? Amina stepped forward, then back, then forward again. Then I guess it's not weird at all. They sat in silence on the back steps behind the building. A small patch of concrete that overlooked the alley, far enough from the street to hear themselves think. Eli handed her a mug of warm apple cider. She hadn't seen him bring it. Do you always take care of people like this? She asked. Only the ones who don't ask for anything. Amina stared down into her mug. You don't know me. I don't need to, he said. You're not asking me to fix you. That's enough. She looked at him carefully. You're not trying to be a hero, are you? No, he said. Heroes make promises. I don't. They sat for a while, watching the wind tug a flyer from a mailbox across the alley. Amina sipped the cider. It's good. From the pantry, he said. Donated by someone who'll never know they made your night a little better. She smiled, but her eyes stayed distant. Do you ever miss having someone to talk to? I'm talking now. You know what I mean. Eli looked out over the dark street. I miss the version of me who didn't expect people to disappear. Amina swallowed. Yeah. A long pause. Then she said, he changed the lock before I even got home, like I was a tenant, not a person. He was never a builder. What? Eli looked at her. Some people build, some consume. He saw what you gave and thought it would keep coming, even when he stopped showing up. I was scared to leave. You didn't, Eli said. You were locked out. That's different. The words settled somewhere deep in her chest. That night, back in her apartment, Amina wrote in her notebook for the first time in weeks. It wasn't poetry or a to-do list. Just one line. I'm allowed to exist without asking for permission. She folded the page, tore it out, and slid it into her medicine cabinet. Some mornings you don't need a plan. You just need a reminder. The next morning started slow. The weather had turned. Thick clouds covered the sky like someone had pulled a wool blanket across the city. Amina moved gingerly around her apartment, feeling the weight in her lower back before she even made it to the bathroom. She winced and leaned forward against the counter, breathing through the tight pull across her belly. The baby wasn't due for nearly 2 months, but her body was tired. When she opened the cabinet for her prenatal pills, the note she'd written the night before fluttered down like a leaf. She picked it up. Read it again. I'm allowed to exist without asking for permission. She folded it once more, slower this time, and slipped it into her coat pocket before heading out. At the building entrance, Eli was already outside, kneeling by the sidewalk planter, adjusting a cracked irrigation pipe. His hoodie sleeves were rolled again. Same posture, same focus. You don't take mornings off? She asked as she reached him. Leaks don't fix themselves, he said without looking up. I meant in general. I don't like being idle. Ever. Not anymore. She crouched down carefully beside him, one hand bracing her knee. What changed? Idle time used to mean too much thinking. These days, I'd rather wear myself out doing something small than get lost trying to fix what's already gone. Amina sat for a beat. You talk like someone who's done a lot of repair work. He looked at her finally. Mostly internal. They didn't say more. But the silence wasn't empty. It was steady, a kind of peace you didn't want to break. At work, the bookstore was quiet. Mondays were like that, just enough customers to keep the lights justified, not enough to be tiring. Amina liked those days. They gave her space to think between moments. Around noon, she pulled out her lunch from the small break room fridge and found something else tucked inside the brown paper bag. A banana. She didn't pack it. She hadn't bought any in a week. Taped to it was a small note in handwriting she didn't recognize yet but would come to, eat something. Stay steady. No name. But she knew. That evening, Eli wasn't outside. She didn't realize how much she'd come to expect him until she scanned the sidewalk without thinking. The porch light glowed now, reliable. Her apartment felt less foreign, less hollow. Still, she hesitated at her own front door before turning across the hallway and knocking on his. It opened halfway. Eli wore a black thermal shirt and soft joggers. His expression didn't change, but his eyes softened slightly. "I didn't see you today," she said. "I stayed in. Long night last night. You okay?" He nodded. "Just tired." A pause. She almost turned to leave. "Do you want company?" she asked quietly. His shoulders dropped half an inch. "Yeah. I think I do." She stepped inside. The place hadn't changed. It smelled faintly of clean laundry and cinnamon again. A puzzle sat half-finished on the coffee table, some kind of forest scene. "I didn't peg you as a puzzle guy," she said, easing onto the couch. "Gives my hands something to do," he replied, grabbing 2 mugs and pouring hot water over fresh tea bags. She watched him move. He didn't hover, didn't crowd her, just moved, like someone who understood space mattered. When he handed her a mug, she noticed the little detail. 2 honey packets placed quietly beside her on the cushion, not forced into her hand. "You think through everything, don't you?" she asked. "I try." She added honey to the tea, stirred slowly. "You ever think you're too careful?" she asked. He sat beside her, not close enough to touch, but not far either. "All the time. So why keep doing it?" Eli exhaled. "Because when I wasn't, people got hurt, or left, or both." Amina sipped. "You think caution keeps people from leaving?" "No, but it keeps me from being the reason they run." She turned to face him, something flickering behind her eyes. "I was with someone who made decisions for me, even small ones, like how much sugar I could eat, what shoes to wear. When I asked why he cared, he said, 'Because you're mine.'" Eli didn't react. "That sound romantic to you?" she asked. "No," he said. "That sounds like control." She looked down at her belly. "I used to believe that being taken care of meant being told what to do, until I realized care doesn't need a leash." Eli's voice was low. "You're not someone who needs handling." That made her eyes water, not because of pain, but because someone finally saw it. They sat in silence again, longer this time. Then Eli stood. "You want to help?" "With what?" "The puzzle. It's giving me a hard time." She smiled. "The forest?" "Yeah. Apparently, every green piece looks like every other green piece. I can help." They spent the next hour on the floor, piecing together edges and finding hidden patterns. She didn't realize how much she'd needed to focus on something that didn't talk back or judge. "I used to do these with my mom," she said. "She'd always hide one piece so she could be the one to finish it." "She's still around?" Amina hesitated. "Not close. She didn't love the idea of me being a mom before marriage." Eli nodded slowly. "Some people hold the wrong things tight and let go of the things that matter." She looked at him. "You ever want a family?" "I used to. And now? I don't know. But I know I want peace." She smiled. "That's a good start." They finished the outer edge of the puzzle before she stood and stretched. "I should go. Feet are starting to swell." He nodded, walked her to the door. "You'll call if you need anything?" She tilted her head. "You'll answer?" "Always." She stepped into the hallway, paused, then turned back. "You still don't make promises?" "No," he said. "But I keep showing up." She nodded. "That works for me. Some people say love is proven in big moments, but what if it's shown most in the quiet ones? Have you ever had someone check on you without making a scene? Have you ever felt safer around someone who didn't push, didn't promise, just showed up? Let us know in the comments if a small act of presence ever meant more than words. And if this story speaks to something real in your life, stay with us. There's more to come. Subscribe to Romance Stories with Mr. Daniel so you never miss a story that reflects what real connection looks like, patient, present, and earned. Tuesday evening, Amina stood inside her apartment with the lights off. She wasn't hiding, she was listening. Outside her door, Eli's ladder creaked gently as he adjusted something overhead. A faint scrape. Then the sound of a screwdriver clicking into place. She opened the door quietly. "You do know most people wait for maintenance to handle things," she said, crossing her arms against the frame. Eli didn't look down. "They said they'd come Friday." Figured Thursday was too long for someone who gets home after dark. She smiled. You always fix what's broken. No, he said, just what I can reach. He finished tightening the bulb and stepped down. Warm light spilled across the porch and into the hallway. She nodded toward it. You don't even live on this side. I do now. She frowned. I moved units, he said. Maintenance had an empty one down here. Figured I'd be closer in case the baby comes early. Amina blinked. You moved? He nodded like it wasn't a big deal. Eli, I didn't ask you to do that. You didn't have to. She didn't respond right away. The hallway felt different now. Not crowded, but considered. Did you give up a better apartment? She asked. He shrugged. The plumbing whined. I like silence. Amina looked at him long. What are you doing? He finally met her eyes. Making sure you don't feel like you're doing this alone. That weekend, she found a folded flyer tucked into her mail slot. Community Cleanup Day. Saturday. Sponsored by a local bookstore and food pantry. She knew who organized it. No signature needed. At first, she planned to skip it. Her ankles were swelling, the weather was cooling, and her energy was uneven at best. But that morning, she pulled on her most comfortable shoes and packed a small bottle of water. She showed up at the park just after 10. Eli was already there. His hoodie was dusted with dirt, hands gloved, sleeves pushed up like always. He didn't look surprised to see her. Got here late, she said. Right on time. She grabbed a pair of gloves and a trash bag and joined him along the park's back path, near the low fence where leaves piled up like confetti. They worked in quiet rhythm. He'd reach for load trash, she'd pace carefully behind, pointing out pieces he might miss. A napkin under a bench, a candy wrapper tangled in weeds. It wasn't about conversation, it was about presence. You ever rest? She asked during a water break. Eli smirked. I told you. I sit down after 9. Amina laughed. And you call that balance? I call it earned stillness. She took a sip. I think I need more stillness. You're allowed, but it feels like if I stop, everything I'm holding might fall apart. Eli looked at her. Then maybe the stillness is how it all stays together. Later that afternoon, a group photo was being taken by the organizers. Amina stepped aside, hands on her lower back. She didn't like being in pictures lately. Her face was puffy, her clothes never fit quite right. But Eli stood beside her anyway, holding 2 paper cups of cider. I think you just don't like how you look in photos, he said. I don't. Then let me take one that never leaves my phone. She stared at him. You want a picture of me? I want to remember today. He didn't raise his phone until she nodded. Then he stepped back, framed the shot, and lowered it again. No smile. She asked. You weren't performing. You were present. That's more honest. She looked down at the cup. Can I see it? He showed her. It was just her. No filter, no pose. Just standing there with wind in her hair, eyes half squinting, face calm. She nodded. It's not pretty. But it's true. I'll take truth, he said. That evening, back at her apartment, she found a brown paper bag on her doorstep. Inside, 2 sandwiches, a small container of soup, and a note. You don't have to pretend you're not tired. She sat on her couch and cried. Not from sadness, not from regret, but from the relief of being seen. The next morning, she knocked on his door. He opened it wearing a white t-shirt and flannel pants. His eyes were still waking. I brought coffee, she said, lifting the 2 cups. You didn't have to. I know, she said, stepping in. But some things don't need asking. Eli didn't keep his apartment like someone who expected company. There were no extra chairs, no throw pillows. The walls were bare except for one framed photo above the bookshelf, a girl about his age, grinning wide, holding a sparkler at dusk. That your sister? Amina asked as they sat with their coffee. He nodded without looking at the frame. Maya. She was louder than I ever learned to be. Amina smiled softly. Looks like she pulled you into the noise whether you liked it or not. Every time. What happened to her? Eli exhaled, staring into his mug. Childbirth. 5 years ago. The baby didn't make it either. Amina's breath caught. I'm sorry. He nodded. I didn't talk for 3 months after. She watched him quietly, not pressing. She used to say, he added, don't love people in pieces. Give them the whole, even if it's small. Amina held her mug tighter. I think that's what scares me, she said, that I'll give someone the whole and they'll treat it like it was disposable. Eli looked up. You already did. And you survived. A long silence. Then she asked, you afraid to try again? He didn't answer at first. I'm afraid of becoming the person I was when she died, he said. I shut down. I walked away from people who needed me. I got real good at disappearing. But you're not that guy now. No, he said. Now I knock before I leave. Amina smiled at that. It wasn't a big line, but it felt like truth. And, in her life, truth had been rare. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Morning walks. Slow, short, quiet. Grocery runs where Eli carried both bags and insisted she choose the kind of juice she wanted without second-guessing her cravings. She didn't call it anything. Neither did he. But when she started leaving a second mug next to the kettle in the morning, neither of them questioned it. They read in silence at the bookstore on slow afternoons. Amina curled in the corner chair, Eli leaning on the shelf, flipping through old poetry. One Thursday, she found a copy of a slim hardcover tucked into her locker at work. Inside, under the cover page, for the woman who listens louder than most people speak. No name, no date, but she knew the handwriting now. One cold evening, Eli knocked on her door holding a shoebox. He looked uncomfortable. What's that? He scratched the back of his neck. Something that might be too much. Now you have to show me. He stepped inside and opened the lid. Inside was a pair of newborn socks, a crocheted grey beanie, and a small white onesie that said handled with care. Amina stared. Someone donated it to the pantry, he said quickly. I wasn't sure if you'd want it, but... She touched the beanie gently. I do. He relaxed. Good. Because if not, I was going to keep it on my shelf and pretend I didn't care. She smiled, but there was something behind her eyes. A softness that hadn't been there weeks ago. I haven't bought anything yet, she admitted. I've been scared to. Like it would make all of this real. It's already real, she nodded. But this makes it feel okay. They didn't say more. They didn't need to. One afternoon, at the food pantry, she caught him holding a toddler while his mom sorted groceries. Eli didn't smile. He didn't make faces. He just held the child gently, securely, like he'd done it before. Afterward, Amina asked, You ever think about being a father? I think about being steady, he said. If that leads me there, I'll be ready. Her breath caught a little, not because he was saying it to her, but because he meant it for himself. That was rarer than any promise. That night, Amina sat on the floor of her apartment with a folded towel under her back and the baby registry app open on her phone. She didn't add anything yet, but she started a list on paper. Socks, bottles, lamps, someone to be in the room. She stared at the last line for a long time, then crossed it out, then rewrote it. Someone who stays. The flyer said community clean to up day, but the energy felt closer to a block party. Kids ran across the grass with paper bags and gloves too big for their hands. Volunteers clustered in small groups, talking more than cleaning. Music buzzed faintly from portable speakers. Someone had brought a cooler with sparkling water. It wasn't chaos exactly, but it was a lot. Amina stood at the edge of the sidewalk, taking it all in. It wasn't the noise that unsettled her. It was the way people stared. She'd shown up alone, pregnant, clearly pregnant, and even though no one said anything, she felt the questions in their glances. Where's the father? Is she okay? Why is she doing this alone? She shifted her tote bag on her shoulder and scanned the crowd. She hadn't told Eli she was coming. She just came. And suddenly, she wanted to leave. Then, from across the lawn, she saw him. Eli stood near a small table handing out water bottles. His sleeves were rolled up. His usual grey hoodie had been replaced with a black long-sleeve shirt, slightly faded at the collar. His posture was the same, grounded, alert without trying to stand out. But it was his eyes that met hers. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just watched her steadily. And that was enough. "Didn't think I'd see you here," he said once she reached him. "I didn't think I'd come. Too much noise, too many eyes." He handed her a bottle. "They'll stop looking when you stop apologizing." She raised an eyebrow. "You think I'm apologizing?" "I think you're bracing." Amina unscrewed the cap and took a long sip. "I thought it'd get easier the longer he was gone." "It might never get easier," Eli said, "but it gets quieter." Inside, he pointed toward the far end of the park. "There's a trail, less crowded. Want to walk?" She nodded. The trail was narrow, partially shaded by overgrown trees. The further they walked, the less they heard music. The fewer people passed, the louder the breeze sounded in the leaves. Amina inhaled deeply. "I needed this," she said. Eli walked beside her, hands in his pockets. "My sister used to say I was allergic to groups," he said. "Couldn't even sit through movie nights if more than 3 people were over. You seem fine around people now, but only because I stopped trying to be liked." She glanced at him. "What do you try to be now?" "Present." They walked a few more steps. "That's harder," she said. "To be here, not in the past, not in the worst-case scenario." He nodded. "But it's the only place anything changes." They found a bench near the back fence and sat. The air was still cool, but the sun broke through occasionally, warming Amina's knees. "I used to love loud places," she said. "Concerts, cafes. The noise made me feel like the quiet inside me was just normal." Eli waited. "But then I met someone who was all charm and sound, and I thought, maybe this is the version of me that works." "You turned yourself down for him," Eli said. She nodded slowly. "I didn't realize how quiet I'd become until I stopped hearing myself think." They sat in stillness. "Did you love him?" he asked finally. "I don't know anymore," she said. "I think I loved the version of me I thought I had to be with him. And now? Now I'm learning to love the parts of me he ignored." Eli looked at her then, fully, his gaze steady but soft. "You've never looked small to me," he said. "Even when you were sitting on a hallway floor, wrapped in a blanket you didn't ask for." She blinked. "That night," he continued, "I didn't give you anything. You gave me permission to witness something most people hide. I was embarrassed. You were honest." She took a slow breath. He added, "And now you're stronger than you've ever had to be." She shook her head. "I don't want to be strong." "You already are." "That's different." They didn't return to the main event. They stayed on the bench until the music faded and the volunteers began to leave. Someone passed them a box of extra gloves and said thanks for coming. Neither of them explained that they hadn't done much, but Amina left feeling like she'd shown up anyway. Back at the apartment building, they reached her door. She pulled out her keys, then paused. "Do you want to come in?" Eli hesitated. "You don't have to," she added. "I know." Still, he stepped inside. They stood quietly in the middle of the living room. Amina leaned her back against the closed door. Eli stood near the window, his eyes on the light drifting across the floorboards. She spoke first. "I've been thinking about delivery day." Eli turned toward her, waiting. "I don't want to be alone in that room." "You won't be." She swallowed. "I don't mean out of pity. I know what you mean." He stepped closer. "I'm not asking you to take on something that isn't yours," she said. "I wouldn't stay if it didn't matter to me." She didn't cry, but her hands shook slightly as she reached for the small folded paper in her coat pocket. "I wrote this weeks ago," she said. "I didn't know why." She handed it to him. He unfolded it. "Someone who stays." He folded it again and slipped it into his jacket. "I'll be there," he said. Amina didn't ask for much in the weeks that followed, but Eli noticed things anyway. She no longer paused at her door each evening. Hearing the soft sound of footsteps behind her made the walk home feel less alone. When groceries got heavier, he carried them without comment. When her back hurt, he adjusted the couch pillows before she even asked. She still hadn't told anyone else about him. Not because she was hiding him, but because she didn't know what to call him yet. Friend, neighbor, something more? He never corrected anyone. When her co-worker assumed he was her brother once, he just nodded. When a nurse at her prenatal check-in asked if he was the father, he stayed quiet until Amina chose to answer. "He's the person I trust to be here," she'd said that day. That seemed to be enough. One evening, after another slow walk around the block, they sat on the front steps watching cars pass. Amina pulled her coat tighter against the early chill. "I always thought I'd be settled by 30, she said. "Married, house, a routine. You still want that?" "Not the version I thought I did. What's different now? I think I used to want something that looked settled more than something that felt real." Eli nodded, sipping from his thermos. "I had that once. On paper. A girl, a lease, a future full of maybe. What happened? I stopped showing up the way I promised. She needed answers. I needed silence. We lost each other in the space between." Amina looked at him carefully. "Do you ever wish you'd said more?" "Sometimes, but I also know I didn't have the words then. And now, I'm learning to speak in actions first." She smiled softly. "You do that well." The first time she invited him to the baby prep class, he hesitated. "I've never been in a room full of expecting parents," he said. "I won't fit in." "You don't need to," she said. "You just need to be beside me." So he went. The room was full of couples, hands on bellies, soft laughter, nervous energy. Eli kept his eyes on Amina the whole time. When the instructor had them practice diapering a doll, Eli was the only one who read the directions twice. When they talked about delivery room roles, he didn't offer jokes or advice, just wrote notes in the margins of the handout and passed it to Amina to review. On the way out, she whispered, "You're not what I expected when I thought about doing this alone. Am I better or worse?" he asked. She didn't answer, but her hand brushed his as they stepped into the parking lot. Later that night, she leaned against his doorframe with a tired smile. "Can I come in?" "You never have to ask," he said. Inside, she sat on the floor with her legs stretched out and her back against the wall. Eli handed her a warm compress for her feet and lowered himself beside her. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm just realizing something," she said. "What's that?" "That this, what we're doing, it's building something. Even if we never said it out loud." Eli leaned his head back against the wall. "I know," he said. "I feel it too." She looked at him for a long moment. "You don't need to take care of me." "I'm not," he said. "I'm choosing to stand beside you. That's different." She reached for his hand. This time, she held it longer. "I don't know what to call this," she said. "Me neither. But I know it doesn't feel temporary." "No," Eli said, tightening his grip gently. "It doesn't." A few nights later, there was a knock at Amina's door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Eli had already gone home, and the hallway was quiet. When she opened it, a man stood on the other side. Familiar posture, but the wrong expression. Her ex. She froze. He looked thinner, less polished, but his voice still held that same casual confidence. "You look different," he said. Amina stood her ground. "You're not supposed to be here. I just wanted to talk. There's nothing to say. I heard you were still in the building. Thought maybe you'd want closure." She felt the words lodge in her throat. Then footsteps. Eli appeared, quiet but firm. He didn't say anything, just stepped forward and stood beside her. Her ex glanced at him. "You moved on fast." "This isn't about you anymore," Amina said. "I'm still the father." "No," she said, steady. "You're the biological contributor. The father will be the one who shows up." Her ex scoffed. "So, that's him?" Eli finally spoke. "That's her decision. And you had your chance." Silence. Then Amina stepped back and closed the door. She didn't shake. She didn't crumble. She turned to Eli and said, "Thank you for not speaking until it mattered." He nodded. Sometimes presence is louder than reaction. Later that night, she wrote something new in her notebook. You can't control who leaves, but you can honor who stays. The hallway was still. Too still. Amina had been folding baby clothes, small onesies, socks no bigger than her thumb, the grey crocheted beanie from Eli's box, when the knock came. It wasn't light or polite. It was rushed, unsure. A sound she hadn't heard in weeks, but recognized immediately. She froze. Not everything inside her stilled. Her hands moved to her belly instinctively, her breath shortened, and her knees tensed. She knew that knock. It didn't belong to a delivery man or a neighbor. Another knock, firmer. Then a voice, low but impatient. Amina, open the door. It was him. She looked around her apartment. Quiet, safe, the place she'd rebuilt. The light still glowed above her door. The space smelled like vanilla and clean cotton. She didn't want that sound to enter here. She didn't want his voice inside these walls. She walked slowly to the door but didn't open it. Why are you here? She asked. I need to talk, he said. Please. She said nothing. I didn't know who else to call, he added. Things have gone bad for me lately. Still, she didn't answer. Her hand hovered over the lock but never turned it. I made mistakes, he said. But I'm trying to fix them. Amina swallowed hard. Then she said, You didn't make mistakes. You made choices, over and over. He was quiet. Then, I just want to see you. A longer pause. And the baby. She stepped back from the door. Her knees felt weak, not from fear, but from clarity. There was nothing to say to a man who only returned when things got hard for him. Not when she'd already survived what he left her to carry. She turned toward the hallway and nearly walked straight into Eli. He must have heard, must have been waiting. He didn't speak, just nodded toward the door. You want me to stay close? She nodded. Then louder, she said, You should leave now. Her ex's voice rose slightly. Who's that with you? You've got another man now? Eli didn't move. He didn't flex or lean forward. He just stood there, arms relaxed, face steady. I said leave, Amina repeated. This isn't your place anymore. A long silence. Then footsteps, fading, fainter, gone. Only after the stairwell door slammed did she let herself exhale. She sat on the couch, both hands on her belly. Eli stood nearby, silent. Do you think I was too calm? She asked. No. Part of me wanted to scream at him. That's what he wanted. Amina nodded slowly. He looked smaller than I remembered. That's what happens when you stop shrinking to fit someone. She let out a long breath. Her chest still felt tight. He said he wanted to see the baby. He forfeited that when he changed the locks and walked away. Eli's voice wasn't angry. It was factual, simple, grounded. I still feel something when I hear his voice, Amina whispered. You're human. I hate that it still reaches me. It's a scar, he said. It doesn't mean you want him back. It just means the wound was deep. She blinked fast. You always make it sound like I'm allowed to feel things without justifying them. You are. She looked up. Why are you so patient? Because I've seen what impatience breaks. She stared at him for a long time. I'm tired, Eli. I know. I don't want him back. I just want what's next to be different. It already is. Later that night, she stood on her porch while Eli fixed the loose gate latch again. He'd fixed it once already, but the wind had knocked it off balance. Seems like life keeps undoing the things you build, she said. Eli looked up. That's why you keep showing up. You don't get tired of it. Of what? Fixing things. He hesitated. Sometimes, he said, but I don't do it because I believe it'll last forever. I do it because I believe it matters now. She folded her arms, stepping closer. You ever wish you could fix people? He met her gaze. No. I wish they'd want to fix themselves. She nodded slowly. Then, for the first time, she reached forward, just enough to rest her hand over his. He didn't flinch. He didn't move. And neither of them said a word. The next morning, Amina didn't leave her apartment right away. She sat on the edge of the bed, with her legs stretched forward, and her hand resting on the round curve of her belly. The baby was kicking more these days, mostly in the early mornings, as if responding to the quiet. The knock from the night before still echoed in her bones. She wasn't afraid of him returning. She was afraid of what it had reminded her, how deeply she'd once convinced herself that love meant staying even when it hurt. But now, someone was staying without hurting her at all. She got up and opened the door across the hall. Eli was already up. A book open, mug steaming. "I made too much oatmeal," he said without looking up. "I brought 2 boiled eggs," she replied, stepping inside. "We're both terrible at asking for company." He smiled softly. "We're getting better." They ate quietly. She told him about the kicking, about the way her baby shifted when she read out loud, about how she sometimes dreamed the baby already had a favorite song. Eli listened without interrupting. That was the thing about him. He didn't respond to fill space. He responded to make space. "I've been thinking," she said, wiping the corner of her mouth, "about the birth. I've got a checklist, but there's a line I keep skipping." "What line?" "Emergency contact." Eli watched her for a moment. "You don't have to fill it with me," he said gently. "I know, but I want to." A long silence. Then he said, "Then write it down." So she did. Full name, Eli Mercer Relationship, Support Phone. She didn't hesitate. That same day, Amina and Eli went to the bookstore together. Not for work, not for volunteering, just to browse. The place was quiet. Midweek afternoons always were. The smell of paper and old stories wrapped around them like something familiar. Amina paused in front of a small display. Parenting books. One had a soft green cover with gold lettering. She picked it up and flipped through the first few pages. "You thinking of getting it?" Eli asked. "I don't know," she said. "It's all so structured. Like it's teaching me how to be someone I'm not yet. You don't have to become someone else to raise a child. What if I don't know enough?" "No one does," he said. "That's why you don't do it alone." She turned to him. "You're not just saying that because I'm standing in front of you." "No," he said. "I'm saying it because I've been beside you long enough to know you already have what matters. You listen, you adjust, you show up. That's what parenting starts with." She looked down at the book again, then set it back. "Maybe I'll start with what I know." That evening, they took a walk around the block. Slowly. The kind of walk where time didn't matter, where they paused every few steps so Amina could breathe, stretch, or just look at the way porch lights flickered on one by one. "You think he'll come back?" she asked suddenly. "Who?" "My ex. Maybe. People like him don't always learn from absence. Sometimes they just miss control." She nodded. "What if he tries again? To push back in?" "Then we push back harder. Not with anger. With clarity." Amina looked at him. "You keep saying we." He stopped walking, faced her. "I say we because I don't see you doing this alone. Not anymore. I'm not a placeholder, Amina. I'm not waiting for someone else to step in." Her breath caught. "Then what are you waiting for?" she asked quietly. He stepped closer. "For you to believe I'm not going anywhere." The air between them stretched. Not tense, just full. Then she whispered, "I believe you." And for the first time since they met, Eli reached for her hand without waiting to be asked. Later, they sat on the stairs between their doors. Porch light above them, the quiet hum of the street below. "I never thought peace would look like this," Amina said. Eli rested his arm behind her, not touching, just near. "What did you expect it to look like?" "I don't know. Bigger, louder, more certain. This feels more honest," he said. She leaned slightly toward him. "I used to think love needed proof, like flowers or declarations. But maybe it's this." "What?" "Being seen. Every day. Without needing to perform." Eli looked at her and said, "You've never had to perform for me." "I know," she said, her voice catching. "That's why I believe it." It happened on a Wednesday. The rain had settled into a dull rhythm against the windows. Amina was halfway through sorting the week's grocery delivery when her phone lit up on the counter. Unknown number, US area code. She let it ring twice before picking up. Hello. Is this Ms. Amina Cole? Her back straightened. The voice was professional. A woman, yes, speaking. I'm calling from Westline General. You're listed as the emergency contact for a patient who was just admitted to our ER. His name is Terence Hale. Amina didn't respond right away. Her breath caught somewhere between her ribs. Is he? He's stable now. Brought in after a minor accident. Nothing life-threatening. He asked that we notify his emergency contact. Amina closed her eyes. I'll be there. Eli drove. He didn't ask questions when she handed him the phone. He didn't flinch when she said the name. He just grabbed his coat, picked up his keys, and opened the passenger door for her like it was any other evening. They didn't talk much on the way. He let the quiet fill in the blanks she didn't want to say out loud. Do you want me to wait in the car? He asked when they pulled into the hospital lot. She shook her head. Come with me. Inside, the nurse at the reception desk glanced between them before pointing to room 214. He's conscious, still being monitored. You're welcome to see him. Eli didn't follow her inside. He waited just outside the doorway, arms folded, leaning against the wall. Inside, Amina stepped carefully into the room. Terence lay against white pillows, 4-line running into his hand, bandage across one temple. He looked smaller than she remembered, paler, but his voice was the same when he saw her. Amina, he said, relief flooding his face. You came? She didn't sit. You listed me as your contact, she said. He nodded slowly. I didn't know who else to put. She crossed her arms. You left. But you still expected me to show up? I didn't expect, he said. I hoped. She looked down, took a breath. I'm not here for you, she said. I'm here to make sure the man who abandoned me doesn't end up needing something that ties me to him again. He swallowed hard. I know I messed up. No, she interrupted. You lied. You cheated. And you locked me out of our home the night I got back from the clinic. I was scared. You were selfish. Silence. Then came another voice. She's not wrong. Amina turned. A woman stood in the doorway, early 30s, calm face, no makeup. She wore a grey sweater and held a folded jacket in her arms. Who are you? Amina asked. I'm his wife, the woman said. Amina's stomach dropped. I thought you should know, the woman added, stepping further inside. He told me about you. Or rather, I found out. The receipts, the missed calls. I made him choose. Terence shifted uncomfortably in the bed. This isn't how I wanted. The woman raised a hand. Don't. You don't get to control the narrative now. She turned to Amina. I was the one who called you that night, she said, from his phone. I wanted to hear your voice, to know who I was being traded for. Amina felt the ground tilt slightly under her feet. I didn't know, she said. I know you didn't. That's why I'm here now. Because I wanted to look you in the eye and say, you weren't the one lying. Tears pricked Amina's eyes. I'm sorry, the woman said softly. Amina swallowed hard. I should go. She turned to leave. Terence called after her. Wait, can't we at least talk? She paused in the doorway, turned just slightly. I spent weeks thinking maybe I'd done something wrong. Maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe I wasn't easy enough to love. But you don't get to rewrite this into a story where I understand why you left. She walked out. Eli straightened as she approached. She didn't speak, just reached for his hand. He took it. In the car, she stared out the window for a long time. He's married, she said finally. I heard. She called me. The night I came home and found the door locked. It was her, not him. Eli didn't reply right away. You're allowed to feel whatever this brings up, he said. I feel stupid. You're not. I feel used. You weren't. I feel like I carried shame that didn't belong to me. Eli nodded. That one's true, but you're not carrying it anymore. She looked at him. Why didn't I see it? Because you loved him. And love makes people generous with the benefit of the doubt. Silence. Then she asked, "Would you ever lie to protect someone?" "No," he said, "because real protection doesn't come from hiding truth. It comes from standing in it." She rested her head against the window. "You still want to be in the delivery room with me?" "More than ever." She didn't cry, but her throat ached, and when he pulled the car into the driveway, she reached over and gripped his wrist. "Stay a little longer tonight." He didn't answer with words. He just turned off the engine and waited until she unlocked her front door, then followed her inside. Amina didn't sleep that night, not in the way rest usually felt. She lay curled on the couch with a blanket over her legs, her hand resting lightly on her belly. The apartment was dark, except for the small lamp Eli had turned on in the corner. He sat in the nearby armchair, legs stretched out, book unopened in his lap. Neither of them spoke for a while. They didn't need to. The silence was honest. "You ever wonder why pain shows up right when things feel settled?" Amina asked. Eli leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Because healing isn't about peace. It's about knowing how to hold still when the peace gets interrupted." She nodded slowly. "Tonight felt like someone broke into my mind and rearranged everything." "You didn't lose anything," he said. "You just finally saw what you survived." She turned her head toward him. "I keep thinking about that woman, his wife. How calm she was. She's probably lived a version of your story, just from a different angle." Amina exhaled. "How do you forgive someone who took so much and gave so little?" "You stop giving them room in your mind," Eli said. "Forgiveness isn't about freeing them. It's about freeing you." That made her pause. "I've said sorry to people who should have been saying it to me," she murmured. Eli stood slowly, walked over, sat on the floor beside the couch. "I've done the same," he said. "Until one day I realized that apology is a door, and not every person deserves to walk through it." She looked at him, his face calm, not rehearsed, his presence not demanding. "Do you think people really change?" she asked. "Yes, but only when they're willing to sit with what they broke." She reached down and gently touched his shoulder. "You've changed," she said. "I'm still changing," he replied, "but not to be better for someone, to be better with someone." The next morning, Eli was already making breakfast when Amina woke. Scrambled eggs, toast, slices of apple on a napkin. She stepped into the kitchen with sleep still on her face and gratitude in her bones. "You always do this?" she asked. "Only when someone brave tells the truth the night before." She smiled, sat down, took a bite. "I want to write something down today," she said. "A letter? No. A record. To who? To myself." Later, after dishes and a walk around the block, Amina sat at her desk and pulled out a notebook. Not the one she used for grocery lists or baby plans, but the one she saved for truth. She began writing slowly. "I thought I lost everything when he left, but I've gained more since that door closed than I ever did when he stood inside. I know now that someone leaving doesn't always mean rejection. Sometimes it's redirection. I wanted a partner. What I needed was to see that I could choose peace. And I did, and I still am." She didn't sign it. She didn't need to. It was hers. That afternoon, she and Eli went to the hospital for her last scheduled prenatal checkup. The nurse smiled when she saw them. "You two always show up early," she said. Amina smiled. "He makes sure of it." After the vitals were done, the doctor came in and reviewed her chart. "You're doing well. Baby's in position. No complications. Just a matter of time now." Eli watched carefully, staying quiet but attentive. Amina saw it, the way he paid attention without stepping in, how he respected the room while still being fully present in it. Afterward, as they stepped into the elevator, she said, "You know they all think you're the father." He didn't laugh. He didn't deflect. "I don't need a title," he said. "Just the permission to be here when you need me." She pressed the elevator button, then turned to him. "What if I need you every day?" His voice didn't waver. "Then I'll show up every day." That night, they returned home to find a small package on her doorstep. No label. no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten. I was wrong about everything. I know I don't deserve to be there, but I want to know when the baby's born. Please let me know. Amina stared at it, then folded the note once and dropped it in the trash. Eli didn't ask what it said. Instead, he asked, "Do you feel clear now?" She nodded. "I don't need closure. I needed space." "You have it," he said. "And you?" "I'm not going anywhere." She didn't say anything else. She just unlocked her door, let him in, and left the door open behind her. Some truths don't arrive loudly. Sometimes they show up in a quiet room, in a folded note, or in the silence after someone finally leaves. Have you ever learned something painful but freeing? Have you ever realized that someone's absence gave you back your voice? If this story reminded you of your own turning point, share what gave you strength in the comments. And if you're still learning to choose peace over permission, stay close. These stories aren't just fiction, they're mirrors. Subscribe to Romance Stories with Mr. Daniel for more honest, human stories about healing, trust, and starting again with dignity. They didn't speak for most of the drive. Amina watched the trees blur past her window, while Eli kept one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting loosely near the gearshift. Jazz played softly on the radio, not loud enough to distract, just enough to hold space between breaths. "I used to love drives like this," she said after a while. "When I had nowhere to be, and no one expecting me." Eli glanced at her, eyes steady. "You've got somewhere to be now. And someone expecting me." She smiled faintly, hand resting gently on the top of her belly. "It feels different," she added. "This time, it doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like permission. To belong somewhere again." They passed a road sign. "Hospital 4 miles back." Neither of them mentioned it. At a red light, Amina reached over and turned down the radio. "I thought I'd feel rage when I saw him," she said. Eli waited, but all I felt was done. Like the last door finally shut. "Sometimes peace doesn't come from forgiveness," he said. "Sometimes it comes from no longer waiting for an apology." She looked at him. "You're full of quiet truth, you know that?" He shrugged. "I just spent a long time talking myself through silence." Amina turned her head back toward the road. "I used to think silence meant someone was withholding. Now I think it's where healing starts." They drove a little farther. Then she added, "Still, I wish I could forget how much it hurt." "You won't." She nodded. "I figured, but you'll remember differently over time," Eli continued. "Eventually, it won't be about what broke. It'll be about what didn't stay broken." She smiled. "Like me? Like you?" Back at the apartment, the sun was starting to sink low. Late afternoon light filtered through the window blinds, casting soft lines across the kitchen counter. Eli opened the fridge. "You still don't label anything," he said. "I like mystery," Amina replied, kicking off her shoes near the couch. He pulled out a container, sniffed, nodded. "It's stew," she laughed. "Or spoiled yogurt pretending to be stew." "Optimism," he said, placing it in the microwave. As it hummed, she leaned against the kitchen doorway and looked at him. "You're different than every man I've known." He glanced at her. "That good or bad?" "Good, but unfamiliar." He waited. "You don't make me feel like I owe you something every time you show up." "You don't. That's new." Eli turned toward her, stepping closer. "You never owed anyone for being loved well. That was their failure to understand love." Amina's eyes dropped. "Then why do I still feel guilty sometimes for accepting this?" "Because you were trained to earn what should have always been free." Her eyes welled unexpectedly. He didn't touch her. He didn't reach. He just said, "You can rest now." That evening, Amina pulled out a small folded paper from her notebook and slid it across the table toward Eli. He raised an eyebrow. "Another list?" She smiled. "A short one." He unfolded it. "Things I thought I'd never have again. Safety, a witness, a steady voice, a hand I didn't have to ask for." Eli read it, then folded it neatly and slipped it into his wallet without a word. Amina blinked. "You're keeping it?" I keep the things that matter. Later, they stood on the building's rooftop. Amina wrapped in a blanket, Eli beside her, both staring out at the city lights. I used to think love had to start with chemistry, she said. And now I think it should start with character. Eli nodded slowly. And build through consistency. They watched a plane blink across the distant sky. No promises, right? She asked softly. No, he said. But I'll be here. Until and unless you ask me not to be. She didn't say anything, but she stepped closer. And this time, when her head rested against his shoulder, it stayed there. The next morning began with a knock. Not rushed, not sharp, just 2 soft raps. Eli, of course. Amina opened the door wearing a long cardigan over her nightshirt. Her hair was wrapped, eyes still sleepy. He held up a brown paper bag and a travel mug. The bakery had warm cornbread muffins. Is this a bribe? She asked. For what? For making me keep living well, even when I feel like disappearing. Eli smiled. Then yes. She stepped aside to let him in. Over breakfast, they sat on the floor near the coffee table. Amina broke off pieces of her muffin, dipping them into her tea. Eli sipped quietly beside her, occasionally glancing toward the bookshelf where her growing pile of baby books now leaned against the framed ultrasound photo. You ever think about the word ready? She asked. All the time. I used to think it meant having everything lined up. The crib, the name, the financial plan, the backup sitter. And now I think it means being willing to meet the unknown without folding. Eli nodded. That's closer to the truth. She studied him. Do you think you'd be doing all of this if your sister hadn't? She stopped. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. It's okay, he said, voice even. I think about that every day. He set down his mug. I couldn't help her. I was too far away, too caught up in my own mess. I didn't take the flight in time. She died before I got to her. Amina's face softened. You don't talk about her much. I used to think talking wouldn't change the outcome. But now I think silence steals the meaning from memory. She reached over, placing her hand lightly on his. You think helping me is part of your healing? No, he said. Helping you is its own thing. It's not about fixing the past. It's about finally choosing the kind of man I can live with. She exhaled slowly. You are that man. That afternoon, she had another appointment, not medical, something more personal. She took Eli with her to the downtown print shop. He carried a flash drive in his pocket and a folded photo she hadn't looked at since it was taken. Inside, they met with a soft-spoken woman who helped them design a small announcement card. No glitter, no pink or blue bows. Just a photo of Amina reading a children's book in the bookstore corner, her hand resting on her stomach. On the back, a simple line. Expected arrival, soon loved already, every single day. Eli looked at the finished design and nodded. It's honest. Amina smiled. That's all I want it to be. Back home, they spread baby items across the living room floor. Bottles, socks, swaddles, a white onesie that said loved before arrival. Eli picked up a pacifier with a tiny giraffe clipped to it. They make these cuter than necessary. Amina laughed. They trick you into thinking you're prepared. He held it up. You are. She looked at him, serious now. Can I ask you something? Big. You can ask me anything. If something ever happens to me. He tensed. Would you? Yes. You don't even know what I was going to ask. I do, he said. And yes. Without hesitation, her voice wavered. Even if there's no title, no legal link? I don't need permission to love who you've trusted me with. Tears touched her eyes but didn't fall. She whispered, I hope you're the first face this baby sees. He didn't smile. He just nodded, steady. And that meant more. That night, Amina couldn't sleep. She stepped outside onto the small balcony with a blanket around her shoulders and a cup of warm ginger tea in her hand. Eli appeared minutes later. No shoes, just socks and quiet footsteps. You okay? He asked. Just thinking about how quiet can feel full now. He leaned on the railing beside her. It's because silence isn't emptiness anymore. She turned toward him. I think I love you. He didn't flinch, didn't smile wide, just took it in like he always did, with reverence. You don't have to say it back, she added quickly. I won't, he said. Not yet. She blinked. Not until the moment I know it won't land on a wound, he said. But I do feel it. Deeply, fully. Her breath caught. And when you say it, she asked, how will I know? He looked straight into her. Because I'll say it without needing you to carry it. She nodded, and for the first time in years, she felt fully held, without a single arm around her. Amina's water broke on a Tuesday. Not in some dramatic moment. No panic, no race down the stairs. Just a soft shift as she stood in the kitchen pouring tea, the kettle whistling gently in the background. She froze. Eli, who had just walked in with the mail, noticed her stillness. What's wrong? She turned her head slowly. I think it's time. He didn't say a word, just set down the mail and reached for her hand. You okay? He asked quietly. More than I thought I'd be. He nodded once. Let's get you to the car. The hospital wasn't far, and Eli had packed a small bag weeks earlier, just in case. It sat by the door, next to Amina's tote. When the nurse asked for the father's name, Amina met Eli's eyes for half a beat. He's my person, she said. He's staying. The nurse nodded. And that was that. Labor wasn't easy. It never is, but it was steady, like her. Eli stayed by her side, his voice calm, his presence quiet but unshakable. When her fingers trembled, he offered a warm cloth. When she snapped once, out of pain, not anger, he didn't flinch or pull away. He just squeezed her hand, saying nothing she didn't already know. You've got this, he whispered. Once. I'm right here. And when the room fell silent except for the newborn's first breathy cry, Eli didn't speak at all. He just watched as Amina's face softened into something deeper than relief. She had done it. They had done it. Later, as nurses cleaned the baby and Amina rested, Eli stepped into the hallway and leaned against the wall. He didn't cry, didn't need to. But he closed his eyes and let the weight settle. Not the weight of fear, the weight of becoming. When he walked back into the room, Amina was holding the baby, wrapped in a soft blanket, wearing the grey beanie. She looked up and smiled. Come meet her, she said. He stepped closer, slow and sure. Her name is Emery, Amina said softly. He repeated it under his breath. Then she added, if you still want to be here, I want you to hold her. He didn't answer. He just reached for the child like he'd done it 1,000 times before. That night, when Amina finally dozed off, Eli stayed in the chair beside her bed, Emery tucked against his chest, the room dim and warm. The nurse peeked in once, saw the three of them, and quietly backed out again. Back home, 3 days later, Amina stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee. She set out 2 mugs without thinking. Eli stepped in from the hallway, Emery sleeping in the wrap against his chest. You left the second mug out, he said. I did. He kissed the top of Emery's head, then looked at Amina. Do you want me to move in officially? He asked. Only if you bring your tea collection, she said. The baby already likes chamomile. He chuckled. You sure? She turned to face him. I'm sure of you. He stepped forward. And now? He asked. Now I want to know something. Anything. She took a slow breath. Do you love me? He didn't hesitate. I love you. Then he added, not because you need me, but because I want to stay, even when I'm not needed. She let the words land, fully. And then, finally, she said them back. I love you too. 2 weeks later, Amina sat at the kitchen table, baby Emery tucked into her chest wrap, snoring lightly. Her coffee had gone cold beside her. Across from her, Eli was assembling a small bookshelf, flat-pack furniture that had come without instructions and far too many screws. This piece doesn't fit, he muttered, turning the wood around. Did you try flipping it? I tried ignoring it. That didn't work either. Amina laughed quietly. Sounds like parenting. He looked up, smirked. Sounds like healing. She sipped her cold coffee. You think we're healed? He shook his head. I think we're honest. That's closer to peace than pretending nothing happened. She nodded. I spent so much time proving I could survive, I forgot I was allowed to want more. Eli screwed in the final bolt, then sat back, wiping his hands. You ever going to let me buy a crib? He asked. I'm not ready for furniture that big. You gave birth. I think you're ready for anything. Amina smiled. Let's just keep building the small stuff. He nodded. Starting with shelves. That night, Eli stood at the bathroom sink brushing his teeth, while Emery slept nearby in a bassinet. Amina leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching him. You ever get tired? She asked. All the time. Then why do you still show up? He rinsed, wiped his face, and looked at her in the mirror. Because you never asked me to. She blinked. That's backwards. No, he said, turning to face her. You gave me space to choose. That's the difference. I'm not doing this out of guilt or expectation. I'm doing it because it's where I want to be. She stepped into the bathroom, resting her hand lightly on his chest. I want you to stay, she said. I know, he replied. And I'm not asking for anything back except that you keep choosing peace. In the early morning hours, Amina woke to the sound of the baby stirring. But Eli was already up, gently rocking Emery in his arms. Go back to sleep, he whispered without turning. She watched for a moment, his sway, his steady voice, his warmth filling the room. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't performative. This was family, earned through action, not claimed through words. A few days later, a letter arrived, handwritten, folded neatly in a plain white envelope. No return address, but the writing was familiar. She opened it at the table, while Eli gave Emery a sponge bath nearby. Inside, the letter read, Amina, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect a reply. I only want to acknowledge what I did, leaving you, lying, failing to show up. I heard the baby's been born. I won't interfere. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. Terence. Amina folded the letter once, then slid it into a kitchen drawer she rarely opened. When Eli returned with the towel-wrapped baby, he saw the look in her eyes. You okay? She nodded. He wrote, Do you want to talk about it? No. I just want to be here. He didn't ask again. That weekend, they went to the bookstore. Emery slept tucked against Amina's chest as they walked the aisles. Eli picked up a children's book and opened it. This one's good, he said. It doesn't talk down to the reader. Sounds like your parenting style. He grinned. Honest, over-polished. She looked at him. You know, you're not the kind of man I thought I'd end up with. Want to return me? No, she said. I want to build a life with you. Slowly. Intentionally. He nodded. Starting when? Already started. That night, they sat on the porch, watching the lights of the city flicker. The baby monitor rested between them, quiet for now. Do you think love changes us? She asked. No, he said. I think it shows us who we are when we stop performing. She rested her head on his shoulder, and finally said, You don't need a title. I know. But if Emery calls you Dad one day, I'll be ready. They didn't say more. They didn't need to. They'd already said everything in the way they stayed, when others hadn't. Not every story needs a perfect ending. Sometimes, it just needs a beginning rooted in truth. Amina didn't find healing in revenge or closure through confrontation. She found peace by choosing differently, by allowing someone to stay, not because he said the right things, but because he showed up when it mattered. Consistently, quietly, without a script. Eli never replaced what was lost. He became part of what was being built. A steady witness. A second mug on the counter. A man who asked for no title but earned the place he stood in. This was not about fixing the past. This was about learning to live without shrinking, loving without permission, and building a future that starts with presence, not performance. If this story reminded you that love doesn't have to be loud to be real. If you've ever learned to trust someone not for what they promised, but for how they showed up, drop A in the comments and tell us, what does consistency mean to you? And if you're on your own journey of rebuilding trust, keep walking. Keep choosing peace. Keep choosing you. Subscribe to Romance Stories with Mr. Daniel for more honest, grounded love stories that reflect real life, real choices, and real healing. We tell stories that don't just entertain, they teach us how to live better.